My original plan for this final major project was to create a first person weapon animation showcase within a shooting range slash training course, like in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 from 2009, not the newer one, where you'll be able to choose two characters. One will be an experienced user, such as John Wick, for example, or one inexperienced gun user that maybe hasn't touched a weapon before. Maybe they've only seen them in video games or in movies, but themselves have never touched a weapon. For the planning phase, I decided to go with a Gantt chart where I created a very quick timetable where I showed off everything that I needed to create, all the animations and stuff like the presentations, alongside with uh, how long it was going to take. I also color coded what I needed to do as well, just to kind of put a little bit of pressure as well. For this, I also created a Trello page where I essentially did the exact same thing. However, the Trello page is a lot more interactive, which allowed me to kind of move things around, making it a lot more easier to follow through. In order to prepare for this project, I actually bought a toy replica of the exact model that I was going to be using, and I would practice certain actions like animations in real life, just to kind of get a feel for it and kind of get the timing right. Not only that, but I also did watch many videos for inspiration, such as the exact models in different games. There are some YouTube videos showcasing um, a certain gun in, let's say, 5 different games or 7 different games. This allowed me to get a nice variety of animations, what's been done and what hasn't been done before. Um, and I also experienced airsoft for on-field training, just to kind of get into that mindset of how it feels to use a weapon. Here is my Blender project file where I have all my animations that I created for my FMP project. Here we can see my setup. Here's the actual Blender view. Here's the first person view. This is what the camera sees. This is helpful for me to actually create the animations and making sure that everything is in camera and everything that doesn't need to be on camera isn't there. Here's where the actions are. This is where you can do all the keyframes. Actions are the animations of Blender. And then here I can change the curves. You will see that later on. So let's give it a start. Here's my reference pose. I always have it saved just in case. Let's say I was missing an animation. I can just go back to this. No problem. So here are all my animations. Anything labeled SKEL underscore SIG underscore MCX is a gun animation. Anything labeled A underscore FP underscore MCX is the arm animations. These are naming conventions that I decided to use, um, just to make it a little bit easier for me later on. So let's take a look at some of these animations. So most of them are super easy. There we are. As you can see, the character's holding the weapon now. Um, and if you play the animation, you will see it's nice and simple. There's not much going on there. Um, it's mostly just an up and down bob. There's some left and right a little bit of rotational. This was really simple. But if we take a look at another animation, such as the reload. Okay, so the reload animation is easily the most complex animation that I've got currently. So if we take a look at it, um, I decided to go for kind of like a John Wick-esque animation. As you can see, when the magazine drops, you can see that it just kind of stays there. That's perfectly fine. In the game engine, I will make it so that it drops to the ground using physics. That's perfectly fine. As you can see in the actual first person camera, you can't see the magazines. That's perfectly fine. Also, during some motions, such as the flick, you can see the camera actually rotates a little bit just to emphasize that motion. Same with the actual inputting of the magazine. You can see the camera goes up just to make sure you see that oomph of the magazine going into the weapon, showing the strength of the character. Um, for the animation of the scope being removed and also the sights being exchanged for the scope, if we take a look at it, it's nice and quick. It's kind of complicated. I'd say it's around the same level of the reload as well. But if we take a little bit of a deep dive into what I've tried to do, so first of all, obviously, this is just the idle pose right here. Um, he takes the gun up, and very immediately, one of the things that I really wanted to make sure was to create an interesting silhouette. So as you can see, the hand right here is very much open. Um, he keeps it open, and again, the silhouette of the arm is always kind of expressive. Even here, I tried to create that kind of like C shape, but I kept in the other fingers again just to create that interesting um, silhouette. It's not perfect, but because this animation is super fast, that's perfectly fine. Here's when the hand is pulling off the front side, I try to kind of hold um, the animation for just a little bit, just for a couple of for a couple of frames, just to emphasize that strength of grabbing the item and then pulling it off for that little bit of anticipation. And the gun rises alongside with it as well, again to emphasize the strength. We go down. Same thing here. As you can see over here as well, the pointer finger, which is supposed to be on the trigger, is to the side of the weapon. This is called trigger discipline. It is very important for using any sort of weapon. When you're not intending to fire your weapon, your finger should be off the trigger, just in case you don't accidentally fire the weapon. Um, a lot of modern video games do this as well for accuracy as well. Another thing that I also did intentionally as well is I made sure that the weapon is off to the side. As you can see, the weapon is not in the middle. This is an intentional take. I watched a video of a Bungie employee explaining their philosophy about how when you're doing the animations, you should try and make sure that the action scene, which is the middle of the screen, should be relatively always open. um, it's essentially imagine your screen in the thirds. Here's one third, here's another, and the last one is right here. So I again intentionally tried to do this just so the action is clear. That way, let's say an enemy is coming up to you, you can tell them instead of the gun kind of being in the way as well. And again, when he puts the sight on, you can see the gun rises alongside of it as well, and then I hold it for a second, a frame as well, trying to keep an interesting silhouette still, and then back to the original pose. As you can see, the hand still trying to keep the interesting silhouette there. So that's the entire animation. whilst I'm not entirely too happy with how the hands move, that is an area of improvement for me. I will say, just because this animation is so quick, the awkward shapes like here, this is a very unnatural shape. It doesn't really matter because it stays on for like a frame and you can't really tell it whilst the animation is playing. So let's take a look at it again in regular motion. So as you can see, you can't see the awkward hand animation. I will say the flow of the hands are still a little bit awkward, but again, I'm planning on improving that in the future. Here's my Unreal Engine 5 project. This is where I created my FMP. As you can see, here's the starting room and 2 extra rooms that I created that I unfortunately had to cut due to running out of time. So let's take a quick look at everything that I've got in store. Here's my files. I tried to keep everything organized. I didn't entirely get everything done as well as I would have liked, but I did use stuff like naming conventions, for example, to make things a little bit easier for me. So as you can see, we've got BP bullet. This stands for bullet print. We've got AN, which whilst it doesn't say on here, this is called a animation notifier. We've got WBP for widget blueprint. We've got GM for game mode, BPI for blueprint interface, etc., etc. I try to keep my naming conventions very accurate. But if you take a look here, as you can see, I didn't entirely get everything in the correct places. I wish that I had, because at one point, unfortunately, I did get stuck for like a day because I couldn't figure out where everything was. Um, but ever since then, I've been very good at keeping things organized. So I've got 3 main folders, didn't end up using data, but the core is all my blueprints. The art is essentially everything else. The animations, this is what I mostly used. I've got the assault rifles, as you can see, animations, audio, materials. Try to keep everything nice and organized. Take a look at my blueprints. Again, I try to keep everything neat and tidy. Maybe it doesn't look too great. For example here, but it is very complicated to keep things like really neat and tidy, but I did try my best, as you can see here. There we are, make that a little bit better. But yeah, I did try and keep everything nice and tidy and organized. Put in some comments as well, just to make sure I can find everything as well. But if we take a look at the final final gameplay, you can see everything is in working order. So we've got the idle animation. You can see the bobbing up and down like I showed you in the in Blender. Got the walk animation. You can see kind of doing steps. You can see the running animation as well, nice and working. Aiming idle. You can shoot. And again, the animations are correct with your aiming animation and the regular shooting. There's some sound effects just to make it a little bit better. You can reload your weapon, again with sound effects, and then you can swap your sights as well. So all my animations made it in there, which I'm really happy with. I think everything looks really great. I've also added some technical animations. These are animations that I created in Engine, and they're mostly using stuff like maths in order to do certain things. For example, when I walk left and right, you can see how the gun kind of moves a little bit from side to side. If you jump, this is the biggest example of this. The gun goes down and then up, and then when you hit the floor, it kind of does like a little bounce back as well. This is just to make sure that the animations are kind of grounded into the game. It makes the overall game feel a lot better as well. You can also see it with when I move my gun left and right as well.